Have you ever felt someone's footsteps echoing just a little too close behind you at night? That uneasy feeling when the street is empty, yet you're certain you're not alone? In 1997, a young woman named Claire experienced exactly that while walking home from her evening shift at a late-night diner. Her story has since circulated among locals as one of the most unsettling real-life encounters in her small town. She lived barely 10 minutes from the diner, but those 10 minutes would become the longest of her life. Tonight, I'll take you through what really happened, and why some say the man who followed her was never fully identified. Stay with me until the end of the story. You'll want to decide for yourself whether this was just a random stranger or something far worse. Claire's routine was ordinary. She worked until close, cashed out her register, and walked home along two quiet streets lined with aging houses and flickering lamps. Most nights she felt safe, but on this night, she couldn't shake the feeling that every step she took was being measured by someone else. She slowed her pace. The footsteps behind her slowed too. She crossed the street. So did he. Have you ever had that exact fear, that no matter how you change direction, the person behind you adjusts? It's a terrifying game of shadows, and Claire was suddenly trapped in it. Claire finally turned her head, pretending to glance casually. A tall man in a long coat was only half a block away. He kept his eyes down, but his pace never faltered. The sound of his shoes on the pavement was steady, deliberate. Her heart raced. She tried to convince herself that he lived nearby, that this was coincidence. But when she took a sudden left turn, one she rarely used, his footsteps followed. He wasn't heading home. He was heading wherever she was. At that moment, she realized she was no longer in control of her walk. She was being hunted step by step. Claire's instincts told her to avoid running. Running might spark a chase. Instead, she pulled out her house keys and gripped them tightly, sharp ends poking between her fingers like makeshift weapons. She scanned for open windows, lit porches, anything that could mean safety. The man drew closer. The street was silent except for the sound of his deliberate steps and Claire's shallow breathing. She swore she could feel his presence tightening around her like a rope. When she finally reached her street, she felt a moment of relief. Her home was only a few houses away. But that relief shattered instantly when she realized he had closed the gap. He was now less than 20 feet behind her. Claire's decision came in a split second. Instead of heading directly to her house, where he could see exactly where she lived, she darted onto a neighbor's porch, pounding on the door as hard as she could. The sudden noise broke the silence of the night. The man froze. For the first time, Claire saw his face clearly under the porch light. Blank expression, wide eyes. Then, without a word, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. By the time her neighbor answered the door, the street was empty. He was gone. The police never identified him, and no one in town admitted to recognizing his description. What would you have done in Claire's place? Would you have confronted him, run, or tried to make it home? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true encounters that will keep you thinking long after the story ends. It was 1998 in a quiet Midwestern town, the kind of place where most streets were empty by nightfall. The only sounds were the low hum of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves carried by the wind. A college student named Megan was walking home after finishing a late-night shift at the diner. She didn't own a car, so she stuck to the same well-lit route every night, 5 blocks of cracked sidewalks, ending with a row of dimly glowing streetlights. On that particular night, she noticed something different. Just ahead, beneath the 3rd streetlight, a man stood perfectly still. His head tilted downward, hands buried in the pockets of his long coat. He wasn't smoking, he wasn't moving, just standing there, as though he had been waiting. Megan felt her pace quicken. At first, she told herself he was just another local, maybe waiting for someone. But the silence of the street made the scene feel wrong, like she had stepped into a photograph instead of real life. If you've ever felt that gut instinct telling you something isn't right, let me know in the comments. I want to hear your stories too. As she approached, Megan kept her eyes straight ahead. She told herself, "Don't make eye contact." Yet something in her peripheral vision caught her. His head slowly began to rise. She didn't hear footsteps, didn't see his chest rise or fall, but she knew he was staring at her now. When she glanced, she realized his face was pale, too pale, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes seemed hollow, though she couldn't tell if it was the shadow from the lamp or something else. What unsettled her most was his smile, too wide, too fixed, like it was carved into his face. Megan crossed to the opposite side of the street, her heartbeat hammering. She tried to convince herself he was just some eccentric townsperson, but when she glanced back, he had stepped forward, one careful, deliberate step, yet his hands remained locked in his coat pockets. She broke into a jog. Would you have crossed the street too, or kept walking past him? Let me know below. 2 blocks from her apartment, Megan thought she had lost him. The street behind her was empty, the man nowhere in sight. She fumbled for her keys, hands trembling. When she heard the sound, slow, measured footsteps echoing across the quiet night, she spun around. There he was again, standing beneath another streetlight, closer this time. His posture never changed, his hands never moved, yet somehow he was following her. The distance between them hadn't closed by running or chasing. It was as though he could simply appear where the streetlight glow was weakest. Panicked, Megan sprinted the last block, reached her building, and slammed the door behind her. She ran up the narrow staircase 2 steps at a time. Her window overlooked the street, and when she looked out, there he was, standing at the edge of the lamplight, head tilted again, fixed on her window. Do you think he was human, or something else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. For weeks, Megan avoided walking home. She begged friends for rides, even left work early just to escape before dark. But one night, after staying too late with coworkers, she had no choice. It was past midnight when she found herself back on that same route. She scanned every streetlight carefully, her heart pounding at each shadow. For the first few blocks, nothing, just silence. Then, as she neared the corner by her apartment, she froze. There he was, the same man, the same coat, the same unnatural stillness. Except this time, he wasn't beneath a streetlight. He was standing in the dark, away from the glow, and yet she could see his face perfectly. His wide grin stretched even further now, as though he was enjoying the fear he caused. Megan ran without looking back. If this was you, would you tell someone, or keep it to yourself? Comment your answer below. Megan moved out a month later, transferring schools and never setting foot in that town again. But to this day, she swears the man wasn't just following her on the street. She believes he was waiting for her specifically, each night choosing to reveal just enough to make her fear him. Some locals claim to have seen him too, always standing by the same 3 streetlights, always with the same hollow stare. But others deny it completely, saying Megan's story is nothing more than a late-night hallucination brought on by exhaustion. Still, the detail remains. Every account mentions the same thing. He never speaks. He never chases. He just waits. And sometimes waiting is worse than being hunted. Megan's final words about him were chilling. The streetlight wasn't keeping me safe. It was showing me where he wanted me to look. What do you think? Was this man real? Or was it something far worse? Share your theories, and don't forget to subscribe for the next true encounter. Have you ever felt the unsettling chill of being watched, even when you thought you were completely alone? In 2004, James, a college sophomore working late nights at a downtown bookstore, thought he was used to the silence of empty streets. But that night, after his shift ended past midnight, the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. The city blocks around him were deserted, the hum of neon lights above the liquor store flickering on and off. He adjusted his backpack, trying to shake the creeping feeling crawling up his neck. Then, from the mouth of a narrow alley, he noticed it. Someone standing perfectly still, half shrouded in darkness. Have you ever had that instinctive feeling to keep walking faster, even if nothing obvious was happening? James knew it well. He didn't want to look back, but his eyes kept pulling toward that alley, and the figure waiting there. If this moment already has you on edge, hit that like button. It tells us to keep bringing you more real encounters like this one. At first, James thought maybe it was just another student, maybe a late worker like him. But something was off. The figure never moved. No shifting weight. No adjustment of clothing. Just stillness. As James passed, his heart raced. He told himself not to make eye contact, but curiosity betrayed him. He glanced, and in that sliver of a second he saw it clearly. The face was pale. Not pale like someone tired or ill. Pale like a mask, waxy and blank. The eyes were wide, unblinking. He quickened his steps. He could hear his own shoes tapping faster against the pavement, but he never heard the figure follow. When he risked a second look, the alley was empty. Or so he thought. Have you ever looked back, certain you'd see something, only to find nothing there? Comment below if that memory still unsettles you. A few nights later, James finished work at nearly the same time. He told himself the first encounter was just exhaustion, his imagination. But as he walked past the same block, he froze. The figure was there again. This time closer to the sidewalk, still not moving, still staring. James pretended to ignore it, walking faster, but his hands shook, his breath uneven. He pulled out his phone, pretending to call someone, hoping it would make him feel less vulnerable. But before he even reached the end of the block, he felt it. That sensation, the one you can't explain. The one that crawls into your bones, the certainty that you're not just being watched, you're being followed. If this were you, would you keep walking or run? Let us know below. James didn't want to look back. He forced himself to keep steady steps. But when he turned the corner, his resistance broke. He risked a glance. The figure had left the alley. Now it was standing directly under a flickering street lamp, closer than before. The pale face seemed almost unreal, stretched into an expression that didn't belong on any normal human. James ran. His backpack pounded against his back as he sprinted across the block, heart hammering. When he finally stumbled into his apartment building, he slammed the door shut and leaned against it, listening for footsteps outside. But all he heard was silence. For the rest of the semester, James never walked that street alone again. He began leaving earlier, sometimes asking coworkers to walk with him. But every now and then, he swore he caught glimpses. A pale face in a store window, a still shadow in an alley, figure motionless, waiting. Whether it was exhaustion, paranoia, or something far more real, James never found out. But one thing he knew for certain: late-night walks were never the same again. If you're still watching, you're the kind of viewer we make these for. Tap subscribe now, because the next story is even more unsettling. Picture this. A lonely highway in 1998, stretching endlessly through rural farmland. Few cars passed after midnight, and the silence of the road was interrupted only by the steady hum of tires on asphalt. That's where Melissa, a 27-year-old nurse, found herself one late night. She had just finished a grueling double shift at the hospital, and the only thing on her mind was getting home. But as the miles passed, her headlights cut across something strange. At the edge of the road stood a man, not walking, not hitchhiking, just standing, arms at his sides, staring into the beams of her car. Would you stop, or would you keep driving? Drop your answer in the comments. Melissa slowed for only a second before instinct kicked in. She pressed harder on the accelerator. The figure vanished into the rearview mirror as she sped past. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Her chest ached with adrenaline. She told herself it was nothing, a farmer, maybe, or someone waiting for a ride. But then she noticed something in the mirror again. The figure, now standing on the opposite side of the road, exactly aligned with her headlights. How had he moved so fast? Melissa's breath caught. She flicked her eyes back to the road, refusing to look again. The radio played softly, a late-night host's voice trying to soothe the silence, but it did little to calm her. Minutes later, her heart sank. Up ahead, illuminated by her headlights, the same figure stood waiting once more. Same stance, same blank stare, arms rigid at his side. She swerved into the opposite lane, barely keeping control of the car as she flew past. This time, she didn't dare look back. If you were behind the wheel in that moment, would you have pulled over or kept driving into the night? Let us know below. The road stretched on endlessly. Melissa thought she was losing her grip on reality. Her palms were slick with sweat. Every mile felt longer than the last. But then, just as she started to believe she had left him behind, a noise shattered the fragile calm. A heavy thump. Something struck the roof of her car. Melissa screamed, swerving slightly before regaining control. She didn't dare stop. She pressed the accelerator until the engine roared, headlights cutting through the darkness, as she prayed the sound was just her imagination. Melissa pulled into her driveway nearly an hour later, shaking. She stumbled out of the car, fumbling for her keys, her whole body trembling. The car was silent now, the night calm, but when she finally looked, her blood froze. On the roof of her car, streaked across the dust, were two perfect handprints. She never drove that road again. If this story unsettled you, hit the like button. It tells us to keep making more. And don't forget to subscribe, because what's coming next might be even darker.